The sound of blow dryers and conversation filled Aisha's salon, tucked away in the middle of a busy city. The high ceilings and shiny marble floors gave the place a fancy feel. The walls were covered with pictures of Aisha standing next to celebrities and politicians, all smiling just like her. Jenna walked in, flipping her brown hair over her shoulder. She wore a sharp business outfit, her bag swinging by her side as she headed toward Aisha's station. Aisha smiled at her best friend through the mirror, her scissors hovering over a client's hair. Jenna snickered and leaned on the counter. "You should be running the city, not just doing their hair." "I'm serious, Aisha. Power's literally in your hands." Aisha shook her head, hiding a familiar feeling of regret behind her smile. Once she had dreamed of being someone who made real change, a political leader like the ones now sitting in her chair. But those dreams seemed far away, like a song she couldn't remember anymore. "I'm happy where I am," Aisha said, though the words felt empty. Jenna gave her a knowing look but didn't push further. "Let me know if you want a job at the firm," Jenna said with a wink. "You've got the connections. I'll leave you to it. Dinner next week." "Definitely," Aisha nodded, glad for the change of subject. As Jenna left, Aisha's smile faded, replaced by the weight of her old what-ifs. She used to study political science with big ideas of changing the world. Now, the world passed by in fancy shoes, sharing bits of their secrets as they sat in her chair. But those dreams were gone now, right? The sun hung low in the sky when Senator Vincent Hastings arrived. His presence commanded attention, even in a room full of people who wielded influence. A tall, imposing figure, he wore his power like a second skin, his gray suit immaculately pressed as he swept into the private backroom of the salon. "Aisha, good to see you," he said, his smile practiced but fleeting as he took a seat. "You too, Senator," Aisha responded, her hands already moving with the ease of someone who had done this 100 times before. Hastings wasn't one for small talk, which suited Aisha just fine. She worked in silence, the snip of her scissors the only sound in the room. But then his phone rang. He answered with a grunt, his tone shifting to something low and urgent. Aisha kept her eyes on his reflection in the mirror, her hands still working on autopilot. "I told you to handle it," he muttered into the phone, his eyes narrowing. "No, the kill switch is non-negotiable. We've invested too much for this to fall apart now." Aisha's hand faltered for a split second, but she quickly recovered, pretending to concentrate on trimming a lock of hair. Her pulse quickened, but she kept her face neutral, the words swirling around in her mind. Kill switch, manipulation, global destabilization. The conversation continued in cryptic snippets, each piece more disturbing than the last. Aisha wasn't naive to the world of politics, but this felt different, darker. When the senator finally hung up, the silence in the room felt heavy, oppressive. Aisha finished the cut, her mind racing with the implications of what she'd overheard. "Looks great as always, Aisha," Hastings said, oblivious to the turmoil he had just stirred in her. He stood, smoothing down his suit. "See you next time." The door closed behind him, leaving Aisha standing alone in the dim room. Her heart was still racing as she looked at herself in the mirror. The reflection staring back was no longer the passive observer. Something had shifted inside her. Something that wouldn't be ignored. The light from Aisha's laptop cast a faint glow across her apartment that night, a stark contrast to the clutter of books and papers scattered across her small living room. Old political science textbooks lay open on the coffee table, alongside hastily scribbled notes from earlier that evening. Aisha sat cross-legged on the couch, her fingers moving rapidly over the keys as she searched for answers to the questions burning in her mind. Market crashes, election rigging, assassinations. The pieces were starting to form a disturbing picture, all linking back to the senator's cryptic words. Her phone buzzed, snapping her out of her research. It was Jenna. "Aisha, it's late. What are you doing?" Jenna's voice came through, concerned but casual. "I'm looking into something," Aisha said, leaning back against the cushions. "I overheard something at the salon today. It's big, Jenna. Bigger than anything I've ever come across. A conspiracy theory." Jenna laughed lightly. "Aisha, you've always had an overactive imagination. This sounds like one of those late-night cable shows." "No, I'm serious." Aisha's voice was low, a knot tightening in her chest. "I'm connecting the dots. There's something happening. A senator, market crashes, a kill switch." There was silence on the other end of the line before Jenna sighed. "Look, I don't doubt you heard something. But you're jumping to conclusions. Politics is messy, you know that. It doesn't mean there's some global conspiracy." Aisha's eyes scanned the screen in front of her. "Maybe," she muttered. "Maybe I'm just seeing things that aren't there." But as Jenna said her goodbyes and hung up, Aisha's gaze landed on a news article she hadn't noticed before. A wealthy business mogul found dead under mysterious circumstances. Her breath caught in her throat. One of her clients had mentioned this same man earlier in the week, hinting at foul play. This wasn't coincidence. It couldn't be. Her pulse quickened. What she'd overheard today wasn't just idle chatter. It was real. It was happening. And it was bigger than anything she could have imagined. Days passed, and the city moved at its usual pace, but for Aisha, everything felt different. The salon, once a bustling hub of beauty and casual gossip, had now transformed into something else entirely. She found herself listening more intently to every word her high-profile clients said, not just out of politeness, but with a purpose she had never felt before. Beneath their seemingly idle chatter, she was searching for the puzzle pieces that could confirm the dangerous truths she was beginning to uncover. On a bright morning, a familiar client, Max Fontaine, a CEO of a major tech company, sat in her chair. As she worked on his hair, Aisha's practiced hands moved with efficiency while her mind raced with questions. "The markets are wild right now," Max said, more to himself than to her. "Everyone's in a panic. But the way I see it, these dips are just opportunities. You know, the game's always been rigged in favor of people like us." He gave her a wink in the mirror. Aisha kept her face neutral. "People like you, how so?" Max chuckled, clearly enjoying the chance to flaunt his insider knowledge. "Come on, you know how it is. Deals are made behind closed doors. By the time the public knows, the outcome's already been decided." She clipped a section of his hair, keeping her tone light. "You mean like with politics?" Max shifted slightly in his seat, sensing her subtle shift in tone but brushing it off. "Everything's connected. Business, politics, all of it. You just have to know the right people." He smirked. "Good thing you're in the room with them." "Huh." Aisha's heart pounded, though she kept her movements steady. Max's casual remarks were the kind of breadcrumbs she had been hoping for. It wasn't enough to confirm the conspiracy, but it was another piece of the puzzle. These powerful figures, with their offended comments and careless arrogance, were all pointing to something larger, something hidden. As Max paid and left, the adrenaline pulsing through Aisha's veins didn't fade. Instead, it intensified. The salon had become more than a place of work. It was now her investigation hub, a goldmine of secrets. Later that week, Aisha found herself at her childhood home, an old house in a quieter part of the city. The place had been vacant for years since her father, Omar, had disappeared. She hadn't visited in ages, but something had drawn her back. Maybe it was the looming questions about her father's involvement in whatever shadowy organization was behind this conspiracy. Or maybe it was a desperate need to reconnect with a part of her past she had long tried to forget. The house was cold and dusty, the air thick with the smell of neglect. Old photographs lined the walls. Images of a happier time when her family had been whole. But those memories now felt like shadows, ghosts that haunted every step she took. Aisha moved through the house methodically, searching for anything that might provide answers. She knew her father had kept records, journals. Anything that could explain his sudden disappearance, and his possible ties to the organization she was investigating. After an hour of fruitless searching, she finally found it. A locked drawer in his old study. Her hands trembled as she broke the lock with a hairpin, a skill she had picked up during a rebellious phase in college. Inside the drawer were several letters and documents, yellowed with age. Aisha's heart clenched as she recognized her father's handwriting. The first letter she opened was addressed to her mother, dated shortly before he vanished. "I did what I had to do. You may never forgive me, but everything I've done was to protect Aisha. The people I've gotten involved with, they're dangerous. If she ever finds out the truth, it will destroy her. I can't let that happen. I'll be gone by the time you read this. But know that I never stopped loving you both." Aisha's breath caught in her throat. Her father had been involved with the organization, the very people she was investigating. Her mind whirled with conflicting emotions. Betrayal, confusion, sadness. He had disappeared to protect her, but from what? And now, she was walking the same dangerous path, one that he had tried to shield her from. She sifted through more documents, piecing together fragments of her father's life after he had left them. He had been deeply involved in global political manipulations, the kind that could crash markets and topple governments. The more she read, the more she realized how deep this conspiracy ran. Her father wasn't just a minor player. He had been a key figure. Suddenly, a knock at the door jolted her out of her thoughts. Her blood ran cold. No one knew she was here. She crept toward the door, peeking through the small window beside it. A black car was parked outside, and standing on the porch was a man she didn't recognize, his sharp suit and cold expression instantly setting her on edge. Heart racing, she backed away from the door, making her way toward the back of the house. Whoever he was, she knew he wasn't here by coincidence. They had found her. Aisha's footsteps echoed in the stillness of the night as she hurried down the quiet street toward her apartment. The events at her father's house had left her rattled. She had barely managed to slip out through the back and make her way home without being followed. Or so she had thought. But as she approached her block, her instincts screamed at her. She felt it. The sensation of eyes watching her. The subtle hum of a car engine that hadn't moved since she turned onto the street. She quickened her pace, glancing over her shoulder. The black sedan was there, creeping slowly down the road behind her. Panic surged through her. Someone was tailing her, and it wasn't hard to guess who. Simon Dougal. His name had come up during her research. A shadowy operative tied to the organization, known for making problems disappear. Her heart pounded as she ducked into a side alley, pressing her back against the cold brick wall. Her breaths coming in shallow gasps. The car passed, but she knew this wasn't over. Dougal was watching her, and the organization was sending her a message: stop digging. Walk away. Or else. When she arrived at her apartment, her hands trembled as she unlocked the door. She stepped inside, locking it behind her, her mind racing. Aisha knew she was in too deep, but the idea of walking away now felt impossible. She couldn't ignore the truth she had uncovered. Not after everything her father had sacrificed to protect her. But just as she started to relax, something caught her eye. Scrawled on her bathroom mirror in bright red lipstick were the words, "Leave it alone." A chill crawled down her spine. They weren't just watching. They were inside her world now.